Hey everyone, ahlan wa sahlan fikum. Welcome back to our show about learning Palestinian Arabic. Today we're going to talk about more learning resources. So specifically, we're going to talk about actually reference tools. So as you're learning the language, as you're learning the Palestinian dialect, what resources can you use online as a reference to search for words that you don't know and so on? See them used like in example sentences. What can we use? Because often the resource or the reference tools that are available online are mostly for standard Arabic. So how do we get around that? Well, that's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to share with you my favorite reference tools and how I use them and how to best use them so that they still sort of serve your purposes as you're learning the dialect. There is a ton to cover today because I have a lot to share with you. So stay tuned and we're about to get into all of that. Okay, so here we are. We're going to start with Google Translate, which is something that you all know, right? But before I get into that, first we have to understand how these reference tools work. We're going to split them up into two different categories. First of all, we have reference tools that are based like they're function like a dictionary. So how does a dictionary work? You have specific words and specific entries or definitions or synonyms of that particular entry. So that's how a basic dictionary works, and all those entries are basically manually created. But with the advent of the internet and information technology and whatever, there are some tools that are based on something else, something that's called a corpus. So a corpus is basically a huge body of text in a particular language that has a counterpart in other languages. And then basically to yield translations of certain words, what some software does like Google Translate is it locates the word that you want in the corpus, let's say in Arabic. So there's a huge text in Arabic. It finds the word that you searched, and then it looks at the same text in the English version, and it finds where that word would be in the English version and how that word was used in English, or like what that was translated as in English. So it's very nice, this system, because this gives you more natural translations that are based on context, because it actually looks at sentences rather than the word sort of out of context and out of a sentence. So it looks at the Arabic sentence and it looks at the English sentence, and whatever that word was translated as in English, which may be different depending on what sentence it's in, it will give you a particular translation. So that's how Google Translate works, and that's how some other resources also work this way, and then there's other ones that work more like a dictionary. Let's look at the implications of this, and what we're going to do is we're going to use all of the reference tools that I'm going to talk about today. We're going to try a couple of words with them and see how they fare and see what this tells us about how we should be using them. So there's three words that we're going to use. We're going to use the word sawa. So sawa means to do. Spoiler alert, I guess, because we're going to try to figure that out with the reference tools. But sawa is a word only in the dialect meaning to do. Well, I mean, kind of this exists in standard Arabic too, but it doesn't mean the same thing. So in standard Arabic, it refers to settling or making something equal or sort of like leveling it out, which is kind of a weird, I mean, it's not really used, it's not a very common word. Whereas in the dialect, it actually means just to do something. So it's like an extremely common word, and it's synonymous with amil, which also means to do something in the dialect. So that's sawa. We're going to try to check for that. We're also going to look for the word musawa. So musawa is actually related to the word sawa, because sawa is form 2 using this root, and musawa is the masdar of the form 3 version of this root. So the form 2 version is sawa, the form 3 version is sawa, and musawa is the masdar of sawa. Anyway, that's not ultra important right now, but musawa means equality. So that's how it kind of relates to, I mean, I told you sawa, like, and this root sort of means to, like, relates to making things equal or leveling things out in standard Arabic. So that's why musawa means equality. And the third term we're going to search for is more like a phrase, I guess, sort of, and it's Adam el Musawa. So Adam is like impossible to, well, it doesn't really translate by itself into English, but that's kind of the point. It kind of means like non something or no, not anti, but just like non something. I know that sounds confusing or like what could that possibly, but that's kind of the point. And it's gonna mess with our tools a little bit, or it's gonna make it kind of work. We're gonna have to work around that. So what this means together, Adam al-Musawa, is inequality. So al-Musawa obviously means equality, but Adam in this case, even though it's a word in Arabic, in English it's like the in part of inequality. That's why I also said it's like non something. So let's look at these words. Sawa, al-Musawa, and Adam al-Musawa. And let's see how to translate or how all these tools fare using these words as I kind of discuss how they work. Okay, so I told you how Google Translate works. But now let's see what happens. Well, first let's see what happens if I put Musawa. Okay, so Musawa, it gives us equality. Okay, fantastic. Equality, parity, equivalence, evenness. That's great because those are all synonyms of this word. That's pretty much the definition that we wanted. But of course, this is a word that is the same in standard Arabic and in the dialect. I mean, in the dialect, it's obviously also Musawa. So that's perfectly useful. But what happens? Well, yeah, okay, let's start there. But what happens if I try to use the word sawa? Well, suddenly it's telling me but. But first of all, that's not a great definition because if you see but, you probably think however, like, oh, I was going to the store, but I don't know, I fell in the street. It's not that kind of but. It's like but as in I have all kinds of food, but apples. I don't know. Like it not except for something in a way, or like, well, never mind. The definition is not really important, but the point is that but it really does not give you the right impression of what it means, and it's confusing. But the reason that it gives you this but is actually because in English sentences, so remember, it finds the sentence in the Arabic corpus, and the English counterparts, this word is translated as but. But if you don't see the whole sentence in English, you're never going to know what kind of but this means because in English, the word but can have a few different sentences, as I just gave you. Like in addition to however, it can be like he's all but intelligent. I don't know, something like that. The point is just that this is very, very limited information based on this. Even though it tries to give you some definitions, first of all, I don't know why the definitions are in Arabic. That's not really going to help someone who's trying to learn Arabic. And these other definitions, here it's as a verb, too smooth, too even, too settled, too straighten. So those are also correct. Like none of this is technically wrong. It's just that it's not very helpful, for example, to see it out of context. And the second reason that it's not very helpful is because it actually is not telling you like the word that it's translating as but is actually siwa. So I wrote, well, when I wrote this word, what I was thinking in my head is sawa, right? But it interpreted it as siwa, and that's why it gave me but. But it also interpreted it as sawa, and that's where it gets this information from. So my point is that this is actually, this over here is a translation of siwa, and this over here is a translation of sawa. They're different words, but it doesn't tell you that, actually. So there are two different words that have been translated here, and it doesn't tell you that it's translated two different words. Now, the issue at the root of why this happened is because all of these tools, unfortunately, this applies to all of it, it's not just Google, but all of these tools are going to ignore diacritics completely. Diacritics are like the short vowels and the shadda and all that. So even if I wrote shadda on this, because of course I was thinking sawa, but I didn't write the shadda, for example, to clarify that it's sawa. But even if I do that, it's not going to care. It's completely going to ignore that. And that's true for all of these websites, to my understanding. So that's unfortunate. And that's one of the challenges, actually, because they can make a difference in whether it's this word or that word, as we just saw. Like here, we're talking about, anyway, you get the point. Okay, so now let's start there. Well, now, as a final point, let's do Adam. Wait, what? Okay, now if I put this, now it gives me inequality. And that is also correct. Okay, good. So this is Google Translate. You know how to use it. You've all heard of it. But I want to show you a much more powerful tool that works pretty much the same way, but I think is much better. And this one is called Reverso Dictionary. So what Reverso Dictionary is, even though it has the word dictionary in the name, it's actually exactly like Google Translate in terms of how it draws from a corpus rather than entries. So it's not entries, but rather a corpus. So what that means, it's going to do the same thing that Google Translate does, but the very key difference is that it actually shows you the sentences from the corpus that it got that information from, which is really useful because it actually shows you that context, and it can clarify, like, as we saw in Google Translate, it gave us but I don't even know what sense of but that is in English. But when it actually shows you the sentence, when Reverso Dictionary actually shows you the sentence, you can see what that means, like what that was supposed to mean. So let's actually put in that word now, sewa. Well, first of all, we don't care about sewa, first of all, but let's just put it in for now. So it gives us only, but, just. But now, here you go. You can actually see you can actually see the sentence in Arabic, and you can see the sentence in English. There's only the Northern Army left to what? Okay, anyway. You gave me no see, this is the sentence that I was trying to make in my head. You gave me no option but to tell the truth. Do you see this but? It's not however. It's rather only. Yeah, it's the only, basically. So but the key thing is that, as you notice, I wrote sawa, or I wanted to let's say I'm learning Palestinian Arabic and I heard sawa and I wanted to type that in and I typed this. Well, this is not what I'm looking for. What we're looking for is the verb to do. And yet this is giving me only, but, just. This would be very confusing, right? So that's the problem with Reverso Dictionary, is that it's also based on Fusha, mainly. It might have a little bit of the dialect in there, but not really enough, because to do is clearly the most basic term, and yet it doesn't have that. So, and if you click on it, which I did earlier, actually you can see way more examples. See, there's like results 50,000 basically. So that's amazing. There's tons and tons and tons of example sentences. Of course, this is not the word that we wanted, though. That's the unfortunate part. But overall, it's a much more powerful tool than just typing in Google Translate and it gives you a word, but totally out of context. Here you can actually see the context. Now, okay, it failed with sawa, but let's see what happens if I write musawa. I mean, you can kind of see where this is going. It's going to work perfectly. Equality, equal, equity. And again, in English, these are different words, but they're synonyms, right? And the only difference is just how they're used in English. So it's nice to see that rather than just giving you all these words, it shows you what types of phrases this can be used in Arabic and how those sound in English. So for example here, equal terms. So musawa means equality, but certainly we don't say equality terms, right? We say equal terms, right? But in Arabic, we can see based on this that the word used is still musawa, even though in English it's equal rather than equality, but it's the same thing. I mean, depending on the phrasing in Arabic. So it's, yeah, as you can see, it's very useful. Now, what happens if we put adam al-musawa? Oh, wait. Well, it still worked, but I mean, I think it's better to do it with the article. Anyway, yeah, so it works. It means inequality, unequal, and look, has plenty of sentences. This is really fantastic, amazing. Yeah, so the reason that this worked, the reason that Adam al-Musawa worked, is because Reverso Dictionary just finds, I mean, you could write like 10 words. It will just try to find the identical phrase in the corpus and then give you what it was translated as in English. So you can write any number of things in here and it will all work. But now let's, oh, wait, I want to go back to this in a minute. Okay, but so those are corpus-based tools. Now let's talk about entry-based tools and how those are different. So next we have Britannica English, which is literally a dictionary. It's basically an Arabic dictionary, but it's a convenient one. I don't actually think it's more powerful than like Reverso Dictionary or anything, because it's literally just it's just a dictionary. So let's write musawa. If we write musawa, it's going to give us a definition: equality, equal rights, settlement. I think the main useful thing from this dictionary is that because it's not just like extracting words from a corpus, like sort of without thinking, but rather it actually kind of knows how the language works. So musawa is the masdar of sawa, and this dictionary actually knows that. So it will also give you the verb sawa, to be equal, to equalize, whatever. In this case, it's not the most useful, it's just not a very common word. But if you put like ta'bir, this means expression, and it will also give you abbar, which means to express something. So it's nice because ta'bir, if you're still learning, if you're more of a beginner, you might not be able to get abbar from ta'bir, but this kind of shows you that connection. Google Translate and Reverso, because they're based on a corpus, it's just different, and it's not going to know this stuff. So it's nice to have that information. So that's how this dictionary works. The same limitation as before still applies, where if you write sawa or if you write sawa, it's not necessarily going to know what diacritics you meant, and even if you write them in, I don't think it's really going to work. So let's just write this and see what happens. Besides, if someone texts you in Arabic, they're not going to write the diacritics anyway, so it's not like you would really even, a lot of the times you wouldn't necessarily know what they are, so it's not like you can really help the dictionary by adding them because you may not know what they are. But anyway, that's just an aside. So if we write sawa, and remember, we still want to figure out what does sawa mean. It means to do, but we're trying to figure that out. And we're not really getting anywhere yet because we still get siwa, but other than, siwan, equality, I guess, sawi, I guess, there's yet for some reason, but anyway, to even level, to equalize, blah, 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 blah. Still, we're not getting to do. So it's the same limitation as before. That's mostly based on Fusha. Okay, so that's an issue. And lastly, let's try Adam el-Musawa. Exactly, that's what I expected. So it's not going to work. Why is it not going to work? Because these are two words. So even though in English, inequality is one word, the tricky thing is that in Arabic, how should I put it? Okay, first of all, you may see these two words, like, let's say you've never seen them before. You may see them, and you may try to search them individually. And unfortunately, if you just search Adam, it's not necessarily okay. See, it's not really going to be very informative, but even if you try to write both words and search it as a phrase, it's not really going to work because there are two words in Arabic. So that's one of the limitations. Because these dictionaries, proper dictionaries, are entry based, it's going to be based on like individual words. And if you search a phrase, it's not really going to work right. So if you're searching more than one word, you should really be using Reverso or even Google Translate, because those will actually just put in the whole phrase that you wrote, and it will find the phrase in the corpus. Do you see what I mean? It's not really creating a definition or it's all it's doing is robotically just finding it in the text. No matter if you write a string of 10 words, if the string of 10 words is in the corpus, it will give you the translation for the string of 10 words. Whereas the single term based dictionaries, they're not really going to accomplish that. So if I have this, I'm going to have to put it in here and get the following. But hey, this is fantastic. But on the other hand, the dictionaries do kind of know the relationship between words, whereas the corpus-based tools don't know that, and they can't give you that information. So it gives us musawa, but it doesn't know sawa. It might give us ta'bir, and it might say expression, but it won't tell you that it's from abba, right? So they're all useful for kind of different things. Okay, the next tool that I wanted to show you is Wiktionary. Of course, I've talked so much about Wiktionary, and I really love it, but let me show you why I love it. Okay, so first let's write musawa. Okay, so we have the pronunciation, not an audio, but still it's something. So it gives you what it should be pronounced as. It tells you verbal noun of sawa. That's fantastic that it actually shows you that relationship, equality, blah, blah, blah. In this case, there's an example sentence. So that's nice. So even though it's a term-based dictionary like Britannica, it's still there are lots of. I mean, it's not like the corpus. It's just that someone has written an example sentence, like they created it, or who knows. But not all the entries. I mean, maybe only 10% or so have actually example sentences. So it's not really something you can rely on, but sometimes it has it. So yeah, it has lots of different information, and that's why it's really useful. But let's see what happens if I write sawa. Or actually, just to illustrate the point, let's see what happens if I write Adam al Musawa. It's not going to work. Yeah, so there's no way. I mean, yeah, of course. So this means inequality, but because it's two words, because it's a phrase, it's not going to know. So that fails at that. So again, for these types of phrases and so on, you're going to have to use the kind of reverso type tools. Okay, but now let's try sawa and see what happens if I write sawa. So sawa, it's going to give you, okay, Arabic, all right. Sawa, to equalize, to smooth, to straighten. No, that's not it, right? So we want to do, right? It's the easiest term, right? But it's failing at it, sadly. And that's because even Wiktionary, it's based on standard Arabic. It's based on Fusha. So that's going to be a challenge. But this is where I come in, because since the beginning of this year, I've been adding entries to Wiktionary for Palestinian Arabic specifically. So that's kind of like the happy ending of the video, I guess. I mean, although we're not done. But so as we've seen, like all of these resources thus far have failed to give us the most simple word, to do. But I've been creating entries since the beginning of this year under the header of South Levantine Arabic. I didn't give it that name, it already existed. But it's because it's Jordan and Palestine. So anyway, if you go down here, these are the entries that I've created. So it's not like Siwan and all this. I've only added Sawa, which is the one that we use in the dialect. And I also don't have all the other definitions that pertain to Fusha. I don't have any of those. Instead, I just have Sawa, to do, to make. Synonym, amil. Boom, we're done. Right? So that's all. That's really what someone is going to be looking for if they're coming from the dialect and they're trying to find more information online. You don't need any more than that. And I have the conjugation information. So there's a whole chart. Sawait, sawat, sawa, bitsawi, and so on. Shu bitsawi. What are you doing? Boom. I mean, can you imagine, like, without having done this, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I mean, without this, all the other resources failed so spectacularly, in fact, because it's like, it really should be the easiest thing. Anyway, so that's that on that. I want to show you something really quick. I'm sure you've seen this before. This is my spreadsheet. So this is my spreadsheet that you can download on the Patreon if you don't have it yet, or for those of you who have it. So as I said a few months ago, well, at the beginning of the year, I started adding entries to Wiktionary for Palestinian Arabic. And then once I started doing that, I started linking from the spreadsheet directly to the entries on Wiktionary. So now, if you look here, if you go through the verbs, you'll see to do. Okay, so let's say you were trying to find it and you were somewhere else on the spreadsheet. Oh, okay. Let's just say you write, okay, how do you say to do? Boom. Okay, well, you have to search. Okay. Okay, there's a lot of, there we go. Okay, so to do. Yeah, and there you will see amil and sawa. And now sawa is blue, which means it's a hyperlink, right? So let's click on it. And sorry, I'd have to manually, there we go. Okay, so this is what it opened. Well, it just opened the same thing that we were on before because that's what it links to. So if you click on the spreadsheet, it will immediately take you to the Wiktionary entry. And it's mostly the same information as on the spreadsheet, although you do have the conjugation chart. But in some cases, like there's like 3 definitions and like lots of synonyms and stuff like that. Like I remember the word adam. It means it means a lot of things. To advance, to progress, to submit, lots of different things. On the spreadsheet, there's basically like 2 synonyms because that's kind of all that fits. But then on the Wiktionary entry, I've added like all the different definitions. And sooner or later, I've already started to add example sentences because I want all of these to have example sentences. Right now, only about 40 terms have example sentences. And there's about 400 and so entries for Palestinian Arabic overall. which, I mean, 400 is actually not that many. Um, so, just because it's basically just me and my friend Victor who's helping. So it's basically just us adding these, and and for the example sentences, that's definitely just me, and there's just only 40. So it's very slow. It's a work in progress. But I'm trying because, as you can see, there's really a lack of these types of resources. So that's where we're at right now. Oh, back on the spreadsheet, really quick. For those of you who have it, I've also started doing this. I mean, since this is, after all, a reference tool, I mean, so I might as well talk about it. But before we, it was, as you can see here, um, you have the derived terms, like these are the masdar, these are the active participles, these are the passive participles. I mean, there's more, like, and it depends on just whether it's used or not. But anyway, normally you would just see it like this, but you may not necessarily know what this word means. Usually you can figure it out based on, like, just what the verb is. So in the case of the verb to exist, although this is green because it's just in Fosha. But anyway, it means to exist. So wujud means existence. But see, now I've added a little pop-up that tells you what it means. Okay, in this case, it's not that like mind-blowing. But let's go back to Adam. If you go here, so the active participle of Adam is mu'addim, which is right here. But in the feminine form, mu'addime, it actually means an introduction. So like the introduction to a book. And it's in Fosha and in the dialect, it means that. So you might pick up a book, first word, introduction, mu'addime. So before, I didn't have these little pop-ups, but now I've added those so that it's sort of more, I don't know, informative, I guess. Anyway, that's what the spreadsheet is, but I've talked so much about that, you're probably bored of it. So yeah, let's come back to all of this. So we've gone through Google Translate, we've gone through Reverso. They're both corpus-based, and Reverso is really powerful because it gives you example sentences. Then we have Britannica and Wiktionary, which are entry-based, and Wiktionary is also sort of the more powerful version because it just has a lot more kind of potential and all these links and conjugation charts and these things. But yeah, do use Britannica and Wiktionary when you're looking for words and more about, like, maybe you want to know a little bit more about the grammar of the words, or whether it's I don't know, just different things about the word itself. And do use the corpus-based ones if you're trying to get more about the context and, like, see it in a sentence. Definitely use Reverso for that. Yeah, so more about the new ones. So see, they're different and they're used for different things. So that's those. I guess we can close them at this point. Now I just want to show you these kind of bonus resources. These are just out of pure interest, but I think they're interesting. So there's this one called Lugatna. I guess it's kind of a Fosha word, actually. Well, because of the U. Anyway, let's not get into that. The point is that this is a dictionary that is trying to be a dictionary for the dialect, which is kind of interesting, but well, it's a work in progress. Let's just say. I mean, I think it's a really interesting resource, and that's why I want to show it to you. But it's a work in progress. But let's see how it fares. Let's search sawa. So I think that if you want to search a word that is more like in standard Arabic, I think there's already great resources for that. So let's not really bother sort of searching for that. Instead, let's just type sawa, because that's a true dialect word. Okay, so let's search sawa, and no match is found. But that's because the IT aspect of this site is a bit wonky. So you have to deselect classical, select Levantine, and you also have to not search by root. You have to search by word. So it's a bit tricky. But once you do that, we have something really confusing, completely in Arabic. So what's going on here? I don't know. That's what I don't know why. But even if you zoom in, you can see that this is sawa, which is not what we want. Now, the information is here, but we have to search for it. So let's keep going. Word. See, I think it's a bit just messy. I think that I really want to commend the person who made this, because they've put a ton of work into it, but it still needs a little bit more work. So this is not what we want. This is also siwa. This is not what we want. Nope. Nope, I'm looking at these, right? That's the actual word. So no, 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 no. Here it is. Okay, sawa, but this is in Arabic. I don't know why, I guess, because my thought is that this should be for, well, I don't know. Anyway, but here we have it. Oh, well, here we have something in English, but it's not the one that we want, per se. Here it is, to do. We had to scroll down to the very bottom of the page. I'm not sure why. I feel like it really should be the first entry because, I mean, that's kind of why I tried to make the Wiktionary entries, like, for these terms, like, as obvious and straightforward, like, exactly what you would be searching for. Because I don't really think, I mean, because this is the most likely definition. It's, I mean, even if it does kind of mean this in a way, I feel like this is really what should come up first. Anyway, the point is that the information is available on this site. So this site will have, I mean, if all else fails, like, not even if all else fails, but just like know that this is another resource. If you type in a word and I haven't added an entry for it on Wiktionary or whatever, please do use this website. Just know that you have to kind of mess around with it to find the right definition. So that's this. Anyway, now moving on. Now I just wanted to show you this. This is very random. Again, this is just extra credit, but there's this website, I guess based on the name, I guess it's Marjam or something. And it's honestly, you know what it is? It's basically like Urban Dictionary, but for Arabic. So it's exactly what you think that means. So there's a lot of kind of just random people making entries for like very kind of risque words, or like their name, you know, like an entry for their name, like he's a cool person, or, you know, all kinds of funny stuff. So this is not like, I'm not like saying like use this to learn a language, like, but it's just a funny kind of thing. But it does, I mean, it is kind of useful in a way, because for like super slangy terms, okay, aside from kind of more jokey stuff, for like very kind of slang terms, I have found them on here where obviously I would never find them anywhere else because it's almost like too slang to even put it anywhere. So, but people do add it on here just for fun. And actually it has tons of dialects, not just Palestinian. So, but if you do click on Palestinian, I'm not even going to click on it, because if you just see all the entries, I don't want to be responsible for what kind of stuff is listed. But anyway, it can be useful in certain scenarios. So, for example, shob means hot, or, well, yeah, shob means hot. I know for a fact that there's no entry. Well, I'm 99% sure that there's no entry for this on Wiktionary, because I haven't added it, I don't think so. So this is kind of the only place where you would be able to find this, because it's a very dialect word, and it just means heat. And you can kind of get a sense of like what is the tone of the website by looking at this. So the definition says الشوب هو الحر الشديد. So shob, it means like intense heat, okay? And then there's like an example sentence which I think is very funny. ما هو مشوب صار بده يحمل what? صار بده يحمل كيس ثلج على راسه. So it's so hot that he wanted to put a bag of ice on his head. You know, it's kind of funny. I mean, like, just very informal, obviously. So again, don't take it too seriously, but it exists. So I thought I would share that with you. And last but not least, Forvo. So you may or may not have heard of Forvo. Forvo, as it says pronunciation dictionary. That's kind of what it is. It doesn't have definitions. It doesn't have the meaning. It doesn't have any of that. It's just pronunciations of pretty much all the words that you could think of. So let's, again, use our example of musawa. So if we actually try to use I don't know what's going on. If we actually try to use Google Translate and write, oh my gosh, musawa, okay, we have her pronounce it.
Musawatun.
Okay, musawatun. It's like a robot, right? This is obviously a very Fusha kind of pronunciation, but I mean, that's fine. But let's write it here. I mean, that was very robotic, very not natural sounding in a way. So what happened? Wait, I thought I searched already. Okay, so you just type a word, and it will show you a list of pronunciations. Often there's more than one person who has pronounced the word, because it's all like people just recording themselves, right? So oftentimes there's more than just one person who's done it, but in this case there's just one. So let's hear what it sounds like. مساواة. Actually, I don't know if you can hear it, but the point is, this lady has pronounced it as مساواة. The Google version was مساواة, because Google is always going to find that basically the most fusha thing ever. That's how Google is going to say it. Like bint, it's going to say it bintun, right? So that's very like extreme fusha. We don't really need that. So these tend to be better and more natural sounding, especially because it's just people recording themselves. And sometimes, but not always, they also do phrases. So I searched earlier for Adam al-Musawa, and it didn't have Adam al-Musawa, inequality, but it did actually have, so حرية التعبير means freedom of expression or freedom of speech, right? And so check it out. So people have actually pronounced these words individually. So we have حرية or حرية. And by the way, you can see it says 3 because if you click on it, you can actually hear all of them. So let's hear all of them. حرية. حرية. So one was more fusha, one was less fusha. It's nice to have the different options, right? حرية. That was without shadda kind of sounding, but okay. And we just have التعبير. And we can also listen to both of them. التعبير, which is interesting that it was pronounced without, or the al was pronounced that way. Anyway, but there's also the compound. حرية التعبير. Fantastic. So that's beautiful. So it has individual words, but it also has sort of common phrases that people have chosen to pronounce. I don't even know. We don't need that. Anyway, so there's lots of different things that you can search. Now let's search سوا and see what happens. So, well, it says there's 2 pronunciations. Let's see what's the first one that comes up. سوا. That's exactly what we wanted. That's fantastic. Now, a sad thing is that it doesn't include the meaning or anything. It literally is just how to pronounce سوا, and then it shows you سوا. But it's interesting because if you click on the next one, siwa. So that's how that person has pronounced it. But that's because I guess they, I don't know why, but the point is that both of those pronunciations are actually valid, but they're different words. It's just that both words are spelt like this. It's just that one would be with shadda, and then all those things are different. So they're actually different words, but they're under the same entry. So just be aware of that. But yeah, because this is based on just people recording themselves and so on, you will have like dialect pronunciations and dialect words if you do search for them. As in the case of, you kind of heard that with حرية, where someone said it as حرية or حرية, and then someone else pronounced it as حرية, right? So it just depends on the speaker, but it's nice that you have tons of variety. I wonder if Shob is on here, just out of pure curiosity. Yeah.
Shob.
Oh, okay. It was pronounced interestingly, but yeah. Anyway, the point is that it's a great resource, Forvo. Anyway, that's really, I'm not going to dwell on anything else anymore. I've probably talked way too much at this point. Let's go back. I don't know what I just did. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so those were my favorite reference tools that I use literally on a daily basis. We have the ones that are more dictionary-based, the ones that are more corpus-based. They're used kind of for different things. So do use all of them, honestly, or at least your favorite ones, but make sure that you know which ones to use when, right? And I think the Forvo one can be especially useful for some people. So yeah, that's what I had to say. Please let me know what you thought about these. Did you know some of these already? Did you not know of them? Did you find something new? What do you use that we should know about if there's something that I missed? I think I kind of covered a lot because I covered, let's list them back. Google Translate, Reverso Dictionary, Wiktionary, Britannica, لغتنا, Forvo, and then that Margin website, which is kind of just like extra credit. But yeah, I mean, that's quite a number. So let us know if there was anything that I missed. And that's kind of all I had to say. So I'll see you next week for our next video.
اهلا حبايبي وشكرا للجماعه اللي بيحضروا القناه. اذا بدكم تكملوا تشوفوا هالفيديوز اعملوا سبسكرايب، واذا شفتوني مؤخرا تفضلوا روحوا شوفوا الفيديوز الماضيه بالبلاي ليست، وتذكروا اني عملت مصادر لتعلم اللهجه الفلسطينيه تقدروا تلاقوها بالموقع تبعي اللي مكتوب تحت بالديسكربشن، ونشوفكم المره الجايه.